I'm Kelly Lemon.
And I'm Michael Paul Williams.
And welcome to the After the Monuments podcast, where we look at events and news about race in a historical context and see how, too often, history repeats itself.
We are delighted to have Jason Kamras, Superintendent of Richmond Public Schools, with us today.
Thank you for joining us, Jason.
Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
We're at an extremely interesting moment in public education in Richmond, and some would use a word other than interesting. Chaotic, for one. But we have seen recently the purging of the State Board of Education of 3 exemplary members, probably as a precursor to a political remake of that board. We are seeing teachers under siege from the government, as the governor of Virginia has instituted a tipline so that students or whomever might report teachers whose lessons run afoul of the prevailing right-wing political correctness. I'm calling it as I see it here, on discussions of race. We've seen a mandate, a mandate from the governor to remove mandatory masking or any possibility of mandatory masking in school districts. So we have all these things. We have books under assault by parents as part of this new parents' rights movement that seemed to come up out of whole cloth during the gubernatorial election, where books are being attacked. Many books of color and many on LGBTQ issues are being attacked. Parents are attempting to ban them. At least one school board member or one elected official in Northern Virginia, I believe, has attempted or even spoke of burning books. So this is where we are. What historical precedents do you see for this moment we are experiencing right now in education?
Well, I don't know of any historical precedent in my lifetime that is analogous to the assault on free thought, truth, and what I believe is the core mission of education, which is to help students learn to think critically, make sense of the world around them, and be equipped to make a better world for themselves and their children and their children's children. You know, I think everything that you listed, quite frankly, is outrageous. It, in my mind, runs counter to the very point of education. So I don't know if it, for those who went to school during the McCarthy era, perhaps there is some analogy there. But again, in my lifetime, in my time in education, I've never seen anything like it.
Do you see, in the way this is playing out, a manifestation, 21st century manifestation of the sort of racial resentment that had Virginia and other states clinging to segregated schools? It seems like that having been deemed unconstitutional, now we're trying to segregate how race is taught in school. We are seeing, not just in Virginia, but in numerous states, attempts to legislate emotion to strip to its core, protect the feelings of white students in the teaching of systemic racism or lessons about systemic racism. Do you see that as a continuum of how race is played out at all in education?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is an extension of the same injustices that have plagued Virginia, Richmond, the country since 1619. Look, here's the bottom line truth. The modern institution of slavery in the United States was created by the Virginia General Assembly. The entire state's infrastructure and economy was built literally on the backs of enslaved Africans. If people are uncomfortable talking about that, in my mind, we should lean into that, not absolve people of experiencing those emotions. I don't think anybody is saying that a current ninth grader who happens to be white is responsible for what happened in 1619. But if that young man or young woman feels discomforted by that, I think that's an important experience for them to go through and to process with their class, with their teachers. And hey, look, I say that as a white man leading a school system of largely Black and Latino children. I want my own two boys who are white presenting, who are RPS students, to have those conversations with their peers. If we don't, I think we have completely failed them and all students in Richmond.
Well, as you know, Virginia has a less than illustrious history of teaching history dishonestly. During my education in the 1960s and 70s, the textbooks were filled with lies and myths about the happy slave. Do you fear that we could be going back to that sort of thing in the direction that education is going?
Well, look, I'll say this. As long as I'm the superintendent of Richmond Public Schools, that ain't going to happen here in Richmond. In fact, we're leaning the other direction. We launched a course here for our high school students called Real Richmond. It teaches the good, the bad, and the ugly about Richmond so that our students are able to fully understand the history of this city in all of its horrid aspects and all of its beautiful aspects, so that they can then take that and create the Richmond of tomorrow and the future. So we are going to continue to lean into these conversations. I do worry outside of places like Richmond and other pockets in the state that, yes, we are going to head back towards an anodized sort of, well, quite frankly, whitewashed version of Virginia's history, which I don't think serves anybody well, including white children.
Have you heard anything anecdotally or experienced anything in Richmond or in other jurisdictions regarding this tip line? I call it a snitch line.
Well, look, I think there is a chilling effect from the tip line where a teacher who might otherwise really want to talk about these issues now is wondering, hey, am I going to wind up on the tip line? So I think whether they do or not is almost beside the point. It's the chilling effect it has on teachers and their decisions, the hundreds of decisions they make about the kind of conversations they want to have, the content to teach. As for the actual efficacy of the tip line, I think it's completely ludicrous, and have encouraged folks to write in with shout outs for their teachers. And I called on the Department of Education to publish those shout outs in support of teachers who are leaning into these topics.
Yeah, and I tried to check out one of the books that was attacked in Hanover, and I couldn't find the book in Henrico Public Libraries. So I think these things actually redound sometimes to the benefit of authors whose works might get more publicity than if they weren't under attack. But what do you think is the calculus here? What is the end game? What is the end goal to undertake an exercise like this, where we're trying to effectively make history, to whitewash history?
Honestly, I hesitate to try to inhabit the minds of those who have led these efforts. My speculation is to, quite frankly, preserve a white-centered narrative about the United States. I think that has all kinds of tentacles that affect not just history, but economics and politics, and also an assault on just basic truths. And we've seen that play out in life-threatening ways with the pandemic, which has disproportionately impacted students and families of color. We saw that here in Richmond. So this isn't just about teaching history, which of course is extremely important, but it quite literally has life and death consequences.
So what can we do about this? All of this?
Yeah, well, look, I think number one, we got to keep calling it out. Every single day, we have to speak the truth, however difficult it is. And there are a lot of difficult things in our past and in our present. I think we have to keep talking about, this isn't just about 1619 or 1865 or Jim Crow. It's also about how all of those things impact today. There's a reason that I-95 goes right through Jackson Ward, and it wasn't an accident.
Nope.
It was because the federal government decided, hey, we can displace a black community, which will be much easier than displacing a white community. Our children need to know that. Our citizens need to know that, so that when the next project comes down the pike, they have that context so they can speak out about what should be. There's no accident that all of the public housing or most of the public housing units were all built together in one area, basically segregated off from the city. It's also no accident that none of them have fiber optic coming to them. And so it was extremely difficult to ensure that they had internet access during the pandemic. It's no accident that health outcomes are different for white Americans and black Americans based upon all of the underlying conditions that many Americans of color have, merely from the stress of living as a person of color in the United States. All of these things are connected to our past. And so if we're going to improve education, if we're going to improve healthcare, housing, transportation, basic quality of life, which everybody aspires to, we have to know how we got here. We have to know what the connection is so that we can change it.
Jason, in terms of the media, and that's who we are, we cover Richmond Public Schools often and a lot. How important is it for us to make sure that the correct stories, but the stories are being told about what's happening within RPS or just in education in general?
Yes. Well, look, I don't love being in the paper almost every day, but having said that, I do appreciate how the RTD in particular does focus on schools. And I will just say, if I can soapbox for a moment, I am dismayed that it appears that the ownership of the paper has eliminated a full-time education reporter. I think that is a huge mistake. Look, we are a public entity serving the people, and the more eyes on the work we do, the better. It's one of the things I love about Richmond is how seriously it takes issues of schools. Now, I will say, I do think there is room to cover more than just the day-to-day school board meeting or this controversy of the day and so on. I think there's opportunity to do more in-depth analyses of some of these systemic issues and how they affect kids. And so that's what I would like to see more coverage of, to help the broader public understand the connections between the past and the present. And then what do we do about it, and how do we help improve it?
After the Monuments is proud to thank Team Henry Enterprises for their support of our show. Team Henry Enterprises is a Black-owned contracting firm specializing in office, retail, medical, multifamily, and higher education construction of all scopes and sizes. In the wake of the George Floyd protest, Team Henry is the very firm contracted by the city of Richmond to take down the Confederate monuments in Richmond and by many other municipalities to remove other Confederate monuments around Virginia and throughout the Southeast. Learn more about Team Henry and how they can help your community rebuild, renovate, or design at teamhenryent.com.
The term parents' rights came up during the gubernatorial campaign and seemed to be a winner and continues to resonate with a lot of folks on the right post-election. One thing that's disappointed me, it's been my observation that parents' rights refers almost exclusively to a single cohort of parents, white, suburban, right-wing in their politics. Why aren't we hearing more from the parents whose point of view is different? it seems like parent has come to stand for a thing that is only partially true. Where are the parents who don't like their books banned, their children's books banned? Where are the parents who desperately supported having a masking option in schools? Where are the parents who want their children to have a holistic school lesson on racism? It seems like they've been overshadowed by the parents on the right. Just any thoughts on that?
Well, look, I've learned in this role, people are far more likely to come out and speak on things that they are against than things that they are for. So I do think that is one challenge that we face broadly. But two, look, let's just call it what it is. The media is more likely to cover white parents arguing about a particular issue than they are parents of color. All you have to do is watch the news to see that. That's one. Two, let's just take some families here in Richmond, for example. A number of our families of color are also low-income families. And what that means is they are literally struggling to get through the day, literally struggling just to take care of their kids, pay the rent, hopefully put food on the table. And so the idea of taking 2-4 hours out of their Monday night to go to a school board meeting to talk about why they want masks or why Toni Morrison's Beloved should be in the curriculum is honestly a nice idea, but just not going to happen. Not because of a lack of desire or will or agency. It's just life is hard growing up when you don't have a lot of means and you pile on top of that all the other institutional systemic racist policies and issues that folks of color face. So honestly, I think that's what it comes down to. If you are of means and you have the ability to come out and do that, you're more likely to do so. And again, I think the media institutionally pays more attention to white voices than it does to voices of color.
Jason, our podcast is about the monuments. After the monuments, things that happened before the monuments were put up, but why are we still dealing with some of these things after these monuments have come down? Before you jumped on, Michael Paul and I were kind of getting into a discussion about school boards and how maybe Richmond's might be a little bit different in their process and their election than some of these other schools. And as I am, highlighting what the journalists say, it seems like Chesterfield and Hanover are a little bit more vocal when it comes to the parents, as you were kind of getting into, than Richmond is. Can you talk about the importance of the school board and how the politics of that affects how you do your job?
Well, the school board is incredibly important. They are the democratic representatives of the people of Richmond to help govern and guide the school division. So absolutely indispensable to the work that we do. I think, one of the key differences between us and the counties is, largely speaking, I think our students and families and staff on many of these issues are a little bit more united than they might be in the counties. And so I do think that factors into how some of these issues play out over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
A little bit about school to prison pipeline. I saw legislation in the General Assembly that seems to want to mandate a certain level of security in our schools. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm strongly against that. I saw a bill making its way through to require a police officer in every school. We had a debate about school resource officers here in Richmond. There wasn't support to make the move away from those individuals. And so they still exist in our schools. I will say knowing many of them, they work admirably in our schools. That being said, I fundamentally believe the institution of police just should not be in schools. And so, look, we're going to continue to work on that. I do think this is part of the same, kind of the same right-wing narrative about needing a greater police presence to monitor what is going on and to sorry, I'm getting some feedback, but yeah, I think it's part of just that broader kind of assault on the sort of culture of schools.
Jason Kamras, Richmond Public Schools Superintendent, we thank you for taking the time to be on the After the Monuments podcast, Real Talk About Race with Michael Paul and I.
Appreciate
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of After the Monuments. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. After the Monuments is a Virginia Video Network production and produced by Matt Pachilli, Michael Paul Williams, and me, Kelli Lemon. Technical direction and editing from Bill Barksdale. Executive production from Paul Farrell, Diane Salvatore, and Paige Mudd. Will Royer provides studio support. Our artwork is by Krishna Mathis. I'm Kelli Lemon, and we'll see you next week on After the Monuments.